I've faced 3 insurgent ambushes, but nothing felt lonelier than standing unacknowledged in my own mother's birthday dinner. It started the moment I walked through the marble-lined entrance of the Halcyon Club, and the air shifted just a fraction, but enough. Conversations paused for a beat. A few sets of eyes flicked in my direction, then quickly darted away like my presence had disrupted some carefully manicured illusion. The hostess squinted at her tablet. "You're with the Quinn party," she asked, her tone flat. I nodded. No smile, no recognition. She simply turned on her heel and led me down the long hallway like I was a late courier with an unwelcome delivery. The private dining room was already full, crystal glasses chiming polished silver flashing under chandeliers, a dozen laughters too sharp to be sincere. The Margaret Quinn 65th celebration banner hung over a curated floral display of hydrangeas and gold-painted eucalyptus. I spotted my father seated near the center, brandy in hand, wearing that expression of distant politeness he reserved for things he couldn't control and didn't want to acknowledge. When he looked up and saw me, he didn't rise. He gave me that familiar smirk, the one I remembered from being 13 and tracking mud across his study carpet. No one moved. No one stood to greet me. One cousin glanced over, blinked, then leaned in closer to her date. The only open seat was tucked behind the massive centerpiece near the swinging doors that led to the kitchen. I caught a whiff of garlic bleach and dish soap each time they opened. The hostess gestured toward it and vanished. I stood for a second longer than I should have. Then I sat. The chair wobbled slightly. My coat brushed something sticky under the table. I adjusted my posture and folded my napkin into a square, giving my hands something to do. Across from me, my mother was deep in conversation with the mayor's wife, completely oblivious or pretending to be. Either way, it didn't matter. I was here apparently, but I wasn't part of the story being told tonight. Still unemployed, huh? The voice came from my left, my father not bothering to lower his voice. I didn't turn. "Retired," I said evenly. He chuckled under his breath. "Right. From that, what was it, logistics?" His tone curled the word into something disposable. 23 years, 5 continents, 6 funerals I had to lead, dozens of medals. None of that seemed to translate into language my family spoke. Across the table, someone muttered something about government pensions. Another laughed too loudly. I gripped my water glass. Then the room shifted again, not for me, but for her. Emily. My sister made her entrance like she always had, perfectly timed and theatrically effortless. Crimson dress, waves of blonde hair cascading over one-shoulder heels that announced her arrival a full second before she appeared. Guests turned. Applause sparked. Margaret Quinn stood to embrace her younger daughter with both arms and a beaming smile I hadn't seen in years. "My baby," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "So proud of you." Emily turned to the crowd with practiced warmth. "It's such an honor to serve this community," she said, referring to her nonprofit New Horizons. "We're only just getting started." Applause again. Someone raised a glass. The mayor leaned in to kiss her cheek. Nobody asked what I'd been doing these past 2 decades. No one asked about the Valor Cross. Or Logan. I lifted my glass of water and stared through it like a lens. Distorted faces. Glittering chandeliers. A blur of things that never quite belonged to me. When the main course was served, filet mignon with truffle butter, I remained quiet, cutting the meat into exact silent bites. Someone joked near the end of the table about former officers working private security. My cousin used to be in the army, they said. Now he scans barcodes at Target. Laughter again. I didn't speak. Just sat smiling faintly, letting it all burn quietly under the surface of my skin. Then, as dessert plates were being cleared, slices of lemon tart with raspberry drizzle, a voice cut through the murmur. Firm, measured, military. Major General Quinn. "Welcome home, ma'am." All heads turned. Emily froze. Harper breathes. Who the hell just said that? He didn't ask what I used to be. He already knew. And said it loud enough for the room to shift. The voice cut through champagne and scripted laughter like a blade through silk, clean and deliberate. I turned slowly, glass still in hand, and found a man standing just beyond the table's edge. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s, Trim build, impeccable posture, a presence that didn't demand attention, just naturally assumed it would be given. His dress uniform was subdued, but unmistakable ribbons aligned with military precision. His eyes locked with mine, unflinching. "Major General Quinn," he repeated. Then came a crisp nod. "Welcome home, ma'am." Silence. My mother's fork hovered in midair. A guest near me dropped her spoon into her wineglass. And Emily, dear, radiant Emily, stood stiff in her heels, lips parted but speechless. I rose instinctively, decades of muscle memory pushing me upright before my mind caught up. "Thank you," I said, the words dry against the walls of my throat. He didn't linger, just nodded once more and stepped away, the moment folding in on itself as murmurs swept across the room. It took me a full 10 minutes to extract myself. I waited until dessert gave way to brandy, until the din grew loud enough to mask my exit. I slipped out the side door onto the garden terrace, the evening air sharp and still sweet with late-blooming jasmine. Beyond the trimmed hedges, the parking lot lights glowed soft against the trees lining the edge of the Halcyon's lawn. He was already there, hands clasped behind his back, staring into the middle distance like an officer in review. He didn't turn as I approached, but his voice reached me anyway. "I didn't mean to cause a scene." "Didn't you?" I said, stopping 2 paces from him. "Because I've never seen my sister at a loss for words before." He turned, then slow and calm. "I assumed she'd introduced us by now." "She hasn't," I said flatly. "I'm Harper, retired." He extended a hand. "Nathan Cross. I serve with the Joint Civil Engagement Corps. Emily's part of our Community Defense Liaison project." I shook it once, then let go. His grip was firm, not overcompensating. A soldier's handshake. Real, not rehearsed. "She never mentioned you," I said. He lifted an eyebrow. "Likewise." There was no malice in his tone, just quiet curiosity. He gestured toward the stone bench beneath the terrace archway. I followed. We sat a polite distance apart. Crickets hummed in the hedges. Inside, a muted burst of laughter echoed off the glass. "She told me her father was a military man." Nathan set his gaze on the stars above the lawn. "Said you were older, living overseas. That she admired your sense of discipline, but you'd chosen a different path." I scoffed. "Is that what she calls 23 years in uniform now?" His head tilted slightly. "She didn't mention your service record. Didn't fit the narrative, I guess," I muttered. He looked at me, then brows furrowed. "But I've seen your name?" I turned to him sharply. "We're in an internal archive," he said. I was reading through a commendation report linked to the Kandahar evac. There was a note about a field decision that saved over 40 civilians during a firestorm retreat. I followed the citation trail. One report led to a personnel file partially redacted, but your name was clear. "That operation was sealed," I said quietly. "It wasn't supposed to go into circulation." "I'm guessing it didn't," he said, "but I have restricted access for liaison review." I didn't dig. It was just there. My stomach tightened. I hadn't thought about that report in years. Hadn't wanted to. "I was medevaced before debrief," I murmured. "Command filed the paperwork without me." Nathan nodded slowly. There was a letter attached. I froze. I remember it because it wasn't written in jargon. It was raw, honest. A field commander taking responsibility for a call that bent protocol to save lives. He met my eyes. It was signed by you. From a hospital bed in Kandahar. That's not something you forget. My lungs stilled. That letter had been the last thing I wrote before they sedated me for surgery. I never kept a copy. I wasn't supposed to. It was meant to shield someone else, not haunt me years later. My voice came out a whisper. That letter wasn't meant to be public. How did it survive? It wasn't a confession. It was a shield, and now someone's using it as a weapon. The motel room was the color of watered-down grief, faded floral wallpaper, brittle white blinds half tilted, and a low hum from the HVAC unit that couldn't quite drown out the rain. I sat on the edge of the bed boots, still on staring at the scuffed linoleum and trying to remember where exactly I had buried the part of me that had once bled for this country without question. In the corner sat my deployment trunk. Same dull green, it had always been the same dent on the left panel from when it fell out of a transport jeep on a rocky incline in Helmand. I hadn't opened it since discharge. I hadn't needed to. Until now. I crossed the room and knelt the air cold against my knees. My fingers found the latches by instinct. They gave with a reluctant metallic groan. The smell hit first dust old cloth, a faint trace of diesel and sand. I peeled back layers rolled up fatigues, a dry rotted canteen field manuals, a cracked compass. And beneath it all, a leather folder, wrapped in a silk bandana. My breath caught. I unwrapped it like something sacred. Inside was my original letter creased, stained the corners curled from years of weight. My handwriting tight and slanted from the morphine haze I'd been swimming in. I scanned the lines, not really reading, but feeling the rhythm of words that once cost me my reputation. I accept full responsibility for the decision to reroute during OP night class it began. The actions taken by Captain Logan Miles were under my verbal direction. That was a lie. Miles had made the call when comms went dark. He'd seen the civilian compound through the smoke, watched the window shatter from a mortar burst. The evac route we'd been assigned would have left them behind. He made a decision in 10 seconds that saved an entire family unit and a school teacher. Command wanted a scapegoat. I had stripes. He didn't. I told them I'd ordered it. They didn't press. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the folder. And then I remembered the medal. It had come in a plain box delivered months after I returned stateside. No note, no insignia. Just the silver Falcon Logan's unit pin polished and gleaming, its back sealed like a locket. I had never worn it. Just kept it in the trunk wrapped in a bandage from my last field tourniquet. I found it nestled beneath a spare set of dog tags. Cold to the touch, deceptively light. I turned it over. There was a seam. My thumb found it, followed the edge, felt the slight give. I reached for my multi-tool, the blade slipping into the crease like it belonged there. A quiet click. The back popped open. Inside, almost impossibly small, was a micro SD card. My pulse kicked. I inserted it into the adapter on my laptop. The screen flickered. A folder appeared: KF Confidential. 3 audio files. No labels. Just timestamps: June 17, 2020. I hit play. First came static. Then a voice, deep, deliberate, and familiar. Manifest says medical aid, but you and I both know that crate holds ordnance. We need it moved before the UN sweep. No questions. Another voice. Urgent. Controlled panic. You can't run weapons through a shelter zone. There are families and their kids rich. I froze. Logan. It was his voice. Clearer than memory. Alive again in this room. The first voice came back colder this time. You don't make the calls here, Captain. You follow them. Silence. Then footsteps. I'm filing a report, Logan said. Then I hope your career survives it. The clip ended. I stared at the screen, the audio file now grayed out like a finished chapter. My hands trembled not from shock, but from the knowledge that I had never known the full story. I had written that letter to protect Logan from protocol fallout. I hadn't realized what he was truly caught in. I had defended a hero, but now I knew he'd died standing in someone's way. The second file opened with quiet chatter, background noise, a generator running boots on concrete. Then Logan, again breathless. If this gets buried, it won't stop. They'll move it to another zone, another town. We're not just risking optics, we're arming monsters. Another voice interjected, female, distant, maybe a field nurse. Captain, your shoulder's bleeding. He grunted. Tell Harper. She'll know what to do. Final voice on the clip. Miles saying, if I don't make it, tell Harper. She'll know what to do. My family didn't lie, they erased. They chose silence as armor and denial as legacy. The Quinn house hadn't changed in 15 years. Same lacquered floors that creaked only in the corners. Same powder blue sofa cushions, too stiff for comfort. Same mantel cluttered with seasonal garland and curated photos in gold-plated frames. Emily's face was everywhere on plaques, in speeches frozen mid-laughter with someone influential. My own image, once on the far right of a family photo, had long been cropped out. I recognized the edge of my sleeve in one print. That was it. I walked past the entryway, my boots echoing like intrusions. The air smelled of citrus polish and something else, something still antiseptic, like a museum piece that no one dared touch. They were waiting for me in the sitting room. My father behind his usual copy of the Everstead Review, Mother nursing a glass of wine she hadn't tasted. Neither looked up as I entered. "Nice of you to call ahead," Gregory said without moving the paper. "I didn't," I said. "You just assumed I would." He lowered the paper with a sigh, folding it carefully like diplomacy. "Then let's skip the formalities." I remained standing. "Why did you do it?" Margaret looked at me then just barely. "Do what?" "You know what I said." The fake citation at the bookstore, cropped photo, no mention of my rank. Just a vague, "served honorably" line beneath a doctored certificate. And Emily parading around in a press kit that lifts language straight out of my deployment files. Margaret set her wineglass down too softly. "Harper, not everything has to be about you." "It's not," I said. "It's about what got taken from me and what you helped hand to her." Gregory adjusted his cufflinks. "You chose the hard path. We never told you to enlist." "No," I said, "but you didn't fight to keep the truth alive either. You let it vanish. You helped rewrite it." He leaned forward. "You were halfway around the world. You sent postcards with coordinates instead of phone calls. You buried yourself in war zones. What were we supposed to do, wait for medals while reporters dug through trauma? You could have remembered me as I was," I said, "not as you needed me to be." Margaret finally met my gaze. "It was easier," she said softly. "Easier for donors. Easier for the family image." I reached into my coat and placed the silver Falcon medal on the coffee table. Beside it, the microSD card still in its plastic sleeve. "This," I said, "is what got someone killed." Silence. Gregory squinted. "What is that, a voice?" I said. "One you won't be able to ignore once the public hears it." Margaret's breath caught. "You're going to make this a scandal." "No," I said. "You already did. You just kept the volume down." My father stood abruptly. "Don't bring this into our home." "I was part of this home," I snapped. "You just painted over me?" A footstep echoed behind me. I turned to see Emily standing in the hallway, arms folded, her blouse pristine, her expression unreadable. "You weren't supposed to bring that here," she said. Her voice was low tight. "Maybe this is exactly where it needs to be. She once begged me not to leave for basic training. Now she acts like I never came back." The garden hadn't changed. Same stone path cutting through the overgrown hedges. Same weathered bench beneath the arbor where we used to make daisy crowns and plot imaginary escape routes from chores and piano practice. It used to feel like neutral ground, a place untouched by the sharp edges of our parents' expectations. Tonight, it felt like a stage one neither of us had rehearsed for. Emily stood near the bench, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as though the fall breeze might slice through her tailored blouse. Her heels sank into the dirt, but she didn't move. "I thought you'd gone," she said. "I had," I replied. "Then I remembered you owed me more than silence." She rolled her eyes, but the movement was brittle. "You don't understand what you've done." "No," I said, stepping closer. "I don't understand what you did." The wind picked up, rustling the boxwood leaves like whispered judgment. She sat down on the bench and motioned for me to do the same. I didn't. "You're sabotaging everything I've built," she said, voice thin. "You showing up making a scene? It changes how people see me." "They saw you exactly how you wanted," I said. "Just not how you deserved." She flinched. "I didn't steal from you. I used what you left behind, the letter I asked." She went quiet. "You gave it to Vale." Her eyes darted away. "He said it was part of a routine background review." I didn't even read the whole thing. "You handed a confession one I wrote to protect a man who died to a man who would sell his own conscience for a campaign contribution." I didn't know, she snapped. "I thought it was just paperwork. Something forgotten." I stepped forward. "He died because he tried to stop something ugly. I wrote that letter to shield him from bureaucracy. And you turned it into a stepping stone." Emily's voice dropped, almost pleading. "I didn't mean to weaponize it. I thought I could use it to build something. I've made good with it, Harper. Don't you see that you don't understand optics? I made something out of your mess." The words hit like cold steel. "My mess," I echoed. "You think a blood-stained decision in a war zone is your brand strategy?" She stood then, chest rising with the effort of self-control. "People listen to me. I speak, and they lean in. I fund shelters. I give speeches that move legislation forward. I'm doing good." "At the cost of truth," I said. "You built a facade on the grave of someone better than either of us." Emily's voice cracked. I never asked you to be the martyr. No, I said, my tone sharpening. You just asked me to stay quiet. And I did. For years. I bled for my silence. Now I'll speak, and you're going to hear every word. She didn't move. Her chin trembled slightly. If you go public. Her voice wavered. I'll lose everything. Then you'd better start practicing humility. The best way to disappear someone. Rewrite their story. Quietly. Completely. The Everstead County Records Office smelled like laminate and forgotten promises. A soft hum buzzed from the ceiling lights, illuminating rows of beige cabinets and index terminals that hadn't been updated since the Bush administration. A young clerk behind the counter chewed on a pen cap and barely looked up as I approached. Military records, I said. Commendations, public citations. Names Harper Quinn. He typed with one hand, still scrolling something on his phone with the other. Branch Marine Corps. 23 years. More clicks. His eyebrows knit together. You sure the name's right? I exhaled slowly. Yes, nothing public in the last decade. Before that, just a generic service confirmation. One press photo cropped, no caption. I leaned forward. Try Logan Miles. Captain, we served together. He shrugged and typed again. Couple of minor mentions. Some footnotes in a transfer log. That's it. I thanked him without meaning it and stepped away, suppressing the urge to snap the keyboard in half. The archives stretched beyond the counter in metal cabinets labeled in handwriting, some so faded they looked like ghosts of letters. I wandered toward the military annex shoes, clicking against sterile linoleum. The annex was colder, quieter, as though patriotism had to be preserved at a lower temperature. I pulled open a cabinet labeled QR and flipped through the folders, feeling my name blur with every paper cut. Then something stopped me. E. Quinn, Community Valor Initiative Press Kit 2021. I opened it. Emily's face beamed from the glossy cover. The tagline read, "A family tradition of duty passed from combat to community." Inside, page after page of curated heroism. Awards. Quotes. Mentions of a sibling who inspired service. One photo cropped at the collar was of me kneeling beside an evac medic, face turned, but unmistakably mine. No credit. No name. I flipped faster now. A speech transcript attributed to Director E. Quinn claimed first-hand experience with military triage and combat-driven decision fatigue. My stomach twisted. You okay, ma'am? A voice behind me said. I turned. An older man in a patched veteran's vest stood by the shelf holding a binder of faded enlistment rosters. Fine, I lied. He peered closer. Wait, you're Harper Quinn. I hesitated. Depends who's asking. Frank Arliss, Army 87 to 03. I read about the Kandahar evac. You were there. You took the fall for that comms breakdown, didn't you? My throat tightened. That was a long time ago. He shook his head. Doesn't make it any less true. Something about the way he said it landed harder than it should have. I thanked him quietly. He nodded once and disappeared down the aisle. I kept digging, this time without apology. Toward the back of the cabinet, I found older press clippings, yellowed brittle. One from 2020 had a byline, E. Quinn Communications Lead. Attached was a memo due to optics, remove direct reference to Harper Quinn unless unavoidable. Use family military legacy instead. Stapled to the back was a printout of my Bronze Star commendation cropped at the rank line. Redacted, stripped bare. Then a post-it note curled with age but legible. RV. Approved. Good optics. I stared at the initials. I didn't need a glossary. Richard Vale. He hadn't just supported Emily. He'd been shaping the narrative from the start. A war built on silence. A brand built on shadows. The pages shook slightly in my hands as I slipped them back into the file. They hadn't merely removed me. Harper whispers, "They didn't just erase me, they made me a prototype for someone else." ChatGPT Denoy. When a man like Richard Vale invites you to dinner, he's not feeding you, he's measuring your price. The tablecloth was white, crisp, pressed to perfection. The kind you never really touch, just glance at to confirm you're someplace expensive enough to not belong. The booth was half-shadowed, tucked away behind thick mahogany dividers and velvet curtains that made the steakhouse feel more like a parlor from a forgotten century than a place to eat. The server poured wine in silence, offered no menu, and then vanished like he'd been trained by the Secret Service. Nathan didn't touch his glass. Across from him, Richard Vale was smiling with all his teeth and none of his warmth. "I admire your restraint," Vale said, swirling his own wine like it held secrets. "Most men your age would have accepted the DC offer by now. Fast track, favorable conditions, visibility." Nathan folded his hands on the table. "I like visibility when it's earned." Vale chuckled. "Then you must be exhausted." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was calculated. Vale leaned back in his chair, letting the soft lighting dance across his cufflinks. "You know, there was a time when integrity was considered malleable. These days, everyone wants to be a damn statue." Nathan didn't answer. Vale took a sip. "Emily speaks highly of you. Says you're measured, neutral. I appreciate that." Neutrality. Nathan is mature and rare. Nathan's jaw clenched, but he kept his posture open. "I try not to insert myself where I don't belong." "Exactly," Vale said, "which is why I think you'd be perfect for the liaison exchange. DC-based. Strategic leadership training. You'd report directly to our oversight panel. And more importantly," he paused for effect, "you'd be free from unnecessary distractions." Nathan met his eyes, such as Vale smiled wider. Old stories. Old letters. Ghosts, if you will. There it was. The reason behind the wine and the curated silence. The carrot dangled just inches from the edge of Nathan's plate. "You want me to ignore something," Nathan said. "Not a question." "I want you to stay above it," Vale replied. "There's a difference." Nathan picked up his glass, looked through the wine like it might offer clarity, then set it down untouched. "And if I don't, you'll still be respected," Vale said, his voice smoother now. "Just not invited to the next table." Nathan smiled thinly. "I've always preferred booths." They parted with a handshake that lasted one beat too long. Outside, the valet pulled Nathan's car around without a word. The cool air bit at his collar as he stepped into the night. But the sweat gathering beneath his shirt had nothing to do with the weather. Inside the car, Nathan unlocked his phone. One unread message from a contact labeled "Just RV. Last chance. After this, we assume alignment." He stared at it for a long second, then deleted it without opening. His fingers hesitated before composing a new message. To Harper Quinn message. "He knows I'm with you. That changes things." He hit send. Harper receives Nathan's message. "He knows I'm with you. That changes things." Some truths don't die with the person they ferment in the silence we bury them in. The morning air at Arlington was so still it felt like the earth had paused to listen. The trees stood in solemn ranks, their autumn leaves like muted metals above the graves. I walked in silence, boots crunching against gravel hands deep in my coat pockets. Row after row of headstones' names, dates wars, long past wars still fresh. A whole forest of sacrifice, each stone whispering what it could. Logan's grave was near the edge of Section 60, not far from the newer markers but distant enough that you had to look for it. The marble was freshly cleaned, a small American flag tucked into the soil beside it. Someone had been here recently. That someone was standing just ahead. She looked so much like him it hurt. 16, maybe. Thin frame, straight dark hair pulled into a braid. She wore a black pea coat too big for her shoulders and held something tight against her chest, a neatly folded flag, edges pressed sharp. I slowed as I approached. She turned before I could speak. Her eyes were steady, too old for her age. "You're Harper," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she nodded. "I'm Lily. My mom told me about you." I swallowed, unsure how to respond to the girl whose life had been cleaved in half by the same silence I'd once believed would protect her. "I didn't know if I should come," I said. "She'd have wanted you to." There was no anger in her voice, no forced warmth either, just clarity. She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope, yellowed edges worn sealed with a simple paper clip. "She found this in his locker," Lily said. "Never mailed it. Said it felt unfinished. But she kept it. I took it carefully, fingers numb despite my gloves. She gave it to me last year," Lily continued. "Told me to read it when I felt ready. I read it last night." I looked at her. She didn't want me to grow up thinking silence was loyalty. I blinked hard and nodded. My fingers trembled as I opened the letter. Logan's handwriting. Slanted deliberate, a few smudged ink drops. He'd written it near the end, I could tell by the date. Harper, if this gets to you, I probably didn't make it. Don't let them turn you into a villain for doing what was right. You didn't follow orders, you followed conscience. You didn't let the system break you. You bent it just enough to save people. I saw it. That matters more than clean records. Whatever they say, I know who you are. I folded the letter slowly, like closing a wound. From my coat pocket, I pulled the silver falcon pin, the one he'd given me before that final mission, the one that had held the SD card, the one I'd carried like a secret too heavy to wear. This belonged to your father, I said, placing it in her hand. He gave it to me once, but it's yours now. Lily stared at it, then closed her fingers around the metal. Her hand didn't shake. You're going to tell the truth, aren't you? She asked. I am. A breeze stirred the flag beside Logan's grave. The sky above was bright but gray-edged, like it hadn't decided whether to mourn or bear witness. I looked down at the headstone, my voice tight. Time to let the country hear what Logan died trying to stop. ChatGPT Danoy. If I was going to pull the rug out from under them, I'd need to stand somewhere solid first. The temporary apartment smelled like printer toner, old coffee, and quiet rage. Notebooks were splayed open across the floor. Pushpins glinted from a corkboard propped against the window, and every wall surface had become a kind of visual assault index cards. Newspaper clippings, blurry screenshots, and one photo of Logan Miles uncaptioned but circled in red ink. I stood in the middle of it all, arms crossed the floor beneath me, a minefield of truths and timelines. Nathan leaned over the dining table now, a war desk, scrolling through emails while Olivia Chan adjusted sound levels on her laptop. She'd arrived from DC 2 nights ago, gray hoodie and combat boots, no nonsense. She didn't ask me if I was sure. Just plugged in her external hard drive and got to work. The tribute video's ready, she said, glancing at me. 5 minutes tight narrative. Opens with Logan's commendation, then transitions into his voice over the audio. Clean, punches hard. And the embargo I asked. Olivia nodded. Goes out tomorrow, off record until the gala starts. 4 outlets are in, no leaks yet. Nathan straightened. Legal called while you were upstairs. I raised an eyebrow. He continued. Military Review Office finished verifying the SD card. Their statement is careful but clear, authentic, sourced from verified personnel, released at the discloser's discretion. I exhaled. So if I play it, you're protected, Nathan said, as a federal whistleblower under Statute 11B. But they also said, he hesitated. Say it, I told him. They said expect retaliation, media spin, institutional blowback. Your name might survive, but your privacy won't. I nodded. Fair trade. Across the room, my phone buzzed. A message from the military council, who'd once questioned every inch of my deployment reports. Proceed with caution. But proceed. I walked over to the corner table where the fake commendation letter still sat in its original brass frame, dust wiped clean, like my father had wanted to forget but couldn't quite let go. I lifted the frame, turned it over, and popped the back open. The paper slid out easily. Clean cardstock. Faux embossing. A half-truth wrapped in gold filigree. I stared at it a moment longer, then fed it into the fireplace. It curled, blackened, hissed once, then vanished. Behind me, Olivia hit record. I stood before the camera with the kind of stillness I hadn't felt since Kandahar. The red light blinked on. My voice came out low, steady. This is not about vengeance, I said. This is about memory and accountability. A good man died doing the right thing. His voice was buried. His truth deserves oxygen. She cut the feed. My laptop dinged. Inbox Gala RSVP confirmed. Event capacity reached. I opened the list. Emily Quinn, Richard Vale, Senator Carrick, Channel 8 News, The Times, State Auditor's Office, every name, every eye, all in one room. The RSVP list for the gala hits her inbox. Emily, Vale, Senators, Media. All eyes in one room. No ribbons, no rank. Just a plain black dress and the weight of everything they tried to bury. The Regency ballroom shimmered like a cathedral built for illusion. Crystal chandeliers glinted above high-backed chairs arranged in precise symmetry. The floor glowed with soft uplighting, the kind that smoothed wrinkles and sharpened smiles. Everything smelled of lilies and curated wealth. I stepped into the hum of forced laughter and orchestral background noise, every inch of me screaming to retreat, but I didn't. My dress was plain. No epaulettes, no pins, no medals. Just the kind of anonymity that drew more attention than a uniform ever could. Nathan met me near the valet entrance. He didn't say anything, just handed me the final cue sheet. I nodded, and together we moved toward the perimeter of the room like two operatives casing the field before the strike. Emily was already on stage, smiling too brightly in a navy sheath, and Pearls posing with the event coordinator for a photo that would no doubt make its way into 3 newspapers and a donor newsletter by morning. She saw me over someone's shoulder and froze only for a second, but it was enough. She pivoted, leaned toward Vale, whispered. He peeled away from the table and made a beeline for the AV booth. Nathan was faster. By the time Vale's aide reached the tech manager, Nathan was already behind the curtain, badge in hand, voice firm. This tribute is on the official program. Harper Quinn is an honored guest. Any last-minute edits would be seen as tampering. The man blinked, unsure what to believe. Nathan didn't blink at all. Vale's aide backed off. Guests sipped wine oblivious. Waiters drifted through with trays of fig crostini. A senator laughed a little too loud at something his intern said. Cameras flashed. I stood near the edge of the room alone in a sea of curated belonging. The MC took the mic. Tonight we celebrate not just leadership, but moral clarity. Few embody that better than Emily Quinn, whose work with New Horizons has brought aid to thousands and elevated the standard of civic service. Applause. Emily mounted the steps, graceful, polished, luminous in the way only fabrication can be. Thank you, she began. When I think of service, I think of those who came before me, who carved paths through chaos so that we could walk in light. She paused. That's when the lights dimmed. The screen behind her flickered to life. Black, then grainy footage. A field hospital, stretchers, smoke. Then his voice. You can't run weapons through a refugee zone. There are children there. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Faces turned frozen between disbelief and dread. More static. Another voice, unfamiliar, defensive. This is above your clearance, Captain. Then Logan again. If we bury this, it'll be on us. All of it. The screen faded to black. Silence. Utter and complete. I stepped forward, heels silent on the polished floor, every eye turning now not with scorn but with stunned awareness. I faced them all, breath steady. I'm not here to be recognized, I said. I'm here because the dead don't get to speak unless we do it for them. Some silences are heavy, others explosive. The ballroom didn't breathe. Even the chandeliers seemed frozen, their crystal droplets refracting nothing but tension. Emily stood motionless on stage, her hands clenched at her sides, the perfect sheen of her speech crumpled into the silence that followed Logan's voice. And then slowly, deliberately, the audio resumed. You can't run weapons through a refugee zone. There are children there. Logan's voice was clear now. Not a ghost, not a headline. Real, present. We swore to protect civilians. You want to move munitions, you do it somewhere else. A pause. Then Vale's voice, colder than I remembered even in memory. You'll do as you're told, or we find another officer willing to play the long game. Think of the funding, the optics. This is bigger than you. A breath. Logan again, low and steady. I didn't sign up to cover for war crimes. A few people in the audience gasped. If I don't make it, tell Harper. She'll know what to do. The screen cut to black. A moment of silence heavier than any medal I'd ever worn. Then chaos began to ripple, not loud, but sharp. Guests shifting in their seats. A woman near the press section whispering to someone on her earpiece. A senator pushing back his chair and walking straight for the exit. Phones appeared like weapons, fingers tapping furiously. Cameras pivoted away from the stage and towards me. Emily turned toward me, pale. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Vale didn't move at all, until he did. He took one step back, then another, as if the floor itself were rising to meet him. Nathan stepped beside me. I didn't look at him, but I felt the certainty in his posture, the kind you develop when you've chosen a side and there's no going back. Then, from the far end of the room, a woman stepped forward. Military uniform, polished shoes, medals that meant something. Lieutenant Colonel Kate Lynn. She climbed the short stairs to the platform without waiting for introduction, turned to face the room, and lifted a folded document from her satchel. Her voice cut through the din. Ladies and gentlemen, I speak tonight on behalf of the Office of Military Legal Affairs. Effective immediately, Major General Harper Quinn is affirmed as a federally protected whistleblower under Article 11B. Another wave of murmurs broke across the crowd. All investigations tied to her name have been reviewed and dismissed. No charges were ever filed. No misconduct confirmed. Her record as of now stands fully restored with commendations intact. Emily's knees buckled slightly. She gripped the podium to steady herself. I didn't move. Lieutenant Call Lynn turned to me, then nodded once. Thank you for speaking, General. You've done what too few have the courage to do. Behind us, footsteps clicked fast and hard. Two federal agents emerged from the shadows, their suits marked with the DOJ insignia. They moved with precision, not rushed, but with purpose. They stopped just short of Vale. The taller agent spoke first. Richard Vale, you are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and violation of international arms trafficking laws. A collective inhale rippled through the room. Vale opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The agent stepped forward, cuffs in hand. And in that moment, a ballroom built for performance became a courtroom of reckoning. The louder the lie, the quieter the fall. The marble hallway behind the Regency stage was dim, quiet, and cold, a sharp contrast to the media storm erupting just beyond the double doors. Questions ricocheted from press pens. Camera flashes burst like distant lightning. Somewhere out there, a podium sat abandoned, Emily's nameplate still affixed, now just another artifact of a carefully constructed image unraveling in real time. She was sitting on the floor, not posed, not collapsed in drama, just slumped. Her gown, custom hand-beaded, the kind that cost more than most soldiers' monthly pay, pooled around her like water with nowhere to go. One strap had slipped down her shoulder, and her eyes, once so precise and rehearsed, stared at the wall like it might offer her a different outcome if she waited long enough. I didn't speak at first. I simply lowered myself to the floor beside her, not in solidarity, not in sympathy, but in acknowledgement. She flinched at the sound of my boots against stone, then turned toward me with a look I hadn't seen since we were kids. The look she used to give me after losing an argument she didn't quite understand. I only wanted to be what you were, she whispered. Her voice cracked in the middle of it, raw and childlike. She didn't look at me. I stared straight ahead. Then you shouldn't have lied about surviving what I barely did. The silence that followed wasn't defensive. It was hollow, the sound of something finally caving in on itself. I didn't know it would go this far, she said. Yes, you did, I replied. You just didn't think you'd get caught. She blinked. Her lip trembled. The glitter along her cheekbone had begun to smudge, cracking at the corners like the last pieces of a mask sliding off. I thought if I could just make people see me that way, I'd deserve it. You thought if you put on my story, I said no one would ask whose blood it cost. She pulled her knees toward her chest, the fabric of the gown bunching beneath her. She didn't cry. There was nothing left to spend. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. Heavy stock, handwritten address. I set it down beside her hand without touching her. What is it? She asked quietly. A list, I said. Names. Civilians. Logan pulled out of that compound. The people I said I'd protect so he wouldn't be court-martialed. The lives your career stepped over. She looked at the envelope like it might burn her. I stood slowly. My knees cracked louder than I liked. But there was something cathartic in that. The ache of years finally standing upright. I didn't look back when I turned to leave. No closing line. No clean ending. Just this moment, her sitting there, surrounded not by applause, but by the wreckage of what she'd built. Harper walks away. For the first time, Emily doesn't follow. Justice doesn't feel like glory. It feels like ash. The motel room was still. Not in a peaceful way. More like a hollowed-out tree, all the movement burned out and the walls left to echo. The window was cracked an inch, letting in a ribbon of wind that fluttered the edge of a newspaper someone had slipped under the door that morning. I picked it up. Major General Quinn cleared veil scandal. Widens Emily Quinn's Patriot brand unravels a family rebuilt on silence and broken by truth. 3 headlines. None of them wrong, none of them enough. The television played on mute in the corner, looping the same montage, me stepping forward at the gala. Logan's audio overlaid on still photos, a freeze frame of veil being let out in cuffs. My face didn't look like mine. It looked like someone caught mid-exhale. Someone about to disappear again. The motel phone rang once, then stopped. I didn't answer it. My military inbox buzzed on the laptop 5th time today. Public Affairs wanted a quote. Defense Review Committee requested a follow-up interview. One outlet asked if I'd pose beside a flag. I closed the lid without replying. Across the room, my duffel sat half-packed. Folders, burner phone boots, a single suit jacket folded too precisely. The walls were bare now. The war room index cards gone. Olivia had cleared her equipment last night. Nathan had returned to his base assignment in upstate New York, but not before leaving a voicemail I hadn't had the courage to delete. We won, you know. We didn't lose, I'd texted back. That's enough. My phone buzzed again. Lily Miles. Hey, if you're still heading to Everstead for the center opening, can I help? I stared at the message, then replied, It's yours too. I zipped the bag shut. Only one thing left on the desk, the silver falcon pin. Polished now, the grime of years wiped clean. The back panel, once sealed with memory, now empty but whole. I held it in my palm for a moment. Not to wear. Just to feel its weight. Harper packs her things. The motel room quiet, emptied of all symbols. The final item in her bag, the silver falcon pin. Cleaned. Ready. Sometimes closure isn't justice. It's the decision to stop bleeding over people who don't care. You were cut. The door to Emily's office stood slightly ajar. Hinges no longer greased, the soft squeal of rusted friction replacing what was once a motion sensor entry chime. No nameplate. Just blank white where her title used to hang, Executive Director, New Horizons Initiative. Gone. Peeled off like she'd never been here at all. I stepped inside without knocking. The space was unrecognizable. The walls were stripped pushpin holes like bullet wounds where her award frames had once hung. Desk drawers stood open and empty. Their contents collapsed into cardboard boxes stacked like silent witnesses. A half-empty coffee mug sat beside packing tape and a shattered photo frame, the glass swept neatly into a dustpan, the image left intact. Emily smiling in uniform, a medal over her heart that never belonged to her. She didn't look up when I entered. Just kept folding a printed press release into thirds, with hands that shook slightly at the corners. I stood there for a moment, watching her move through the shell of the persona she'd constructed. I thought you'd already left town, she said finally, still not meeting my eyes. Thought you'd still be denying it. She looked up, then eyes rimmed red but dry. Her voice cracked. I didn't know what the letter meant. Not really. I didn't know what it cost. You knew it wasn't yours. I thought I could honor it. No, I said. You thought you could wear it. Silence stretched between us. She sat down slowly, as if even the chair was reluctant to hold her anymore. I wanted to be more than just Emily. I wanted to matter. You matter when you show up, I said. Not when you steal someone else's sacrifice. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to plead, but nothing came out. I reached into my coat and pulled out the folder. Manila plain, but heavier than its weight. These are the names you used, I said. The people Logan saved. The ones you dropped into speeches like props. She took it, fingers brushing mine only for a second. If you ever find the guts, I said, you'll apologize. In person. Not in press statements. Not with PR. You look them in the eye and tell them what you did. Her hands trembled as she slid the folder into a box. No rebuttal. No breakdown. Just the quiet hiss of packing tape across cardboard sealing what was left of her legacy. I didn't wait for her to speak. I turned, stepped out the door, and let it close behind me with a soft finality. Outside, the wind had picked up, scattering dried leaves across the empty parking lot. My boots crushed them without ceremony. I didn't look back. Not every war ends with a flag. Sometimes it ends with a plaque, and the truth nailed to it. The morning air was crisp, the kind of cool that wrapped itself around your lungs and reminded you fall had arrived whether you were ready or not. The sky above the Logan Miles Veterans Resource Center was soft gray. A gentle hush laid over Everstead like the town itself had paused to take a breath. There were no banners, no marching bands, just a modest crowd scattered across the courtyard. Their jackets zipped, hands tucked into pockets, expressions solemn but unafraid. I stood near the podium with Lily, her braid tighter today, her spine straighter. She wore her father's old pea coat, the sleeves too long, but she didn't roll them up. She let them drape like they belonged there. Nathan stood to the side, quiet hands folded in front of him. He wore his formal uniform, but not for show, for memory, for respect. When I stepped up to the mic, the hush deepened. I cleared my throat, but not to gather courage, just to let it settle. This building, I said, isn't here to rewrite history. It's here to make sure history isn't erased again. No applause, just silence. Exactly what I'd hoped for. Inside the foyer gleamed with light. The front exhibit stood beneath a small skylight, a simple glass case housing 3 items: Logan's photo, the original letter I'd written from that Kandahar hospital bed, and the silver falcon medal I'd carried longer than I'd ever admitted. Lily stepped forward slowly, reverently. From her pocket, she pulled her father's bronze star, the real one. Not the replica her mother had hidden. Not the one Emily had pinned on herself like theater. She placed it beside the letter, then stepped back. Guests moved through in silence. Some saluted. Some bowed their heads. Others just stood, hands in their pockets, eyes on the case like they were watching something sacred breathe. Near the back wall was a blank space. No art, no inscription. Just a polished section of oak paneling still unfinished. I walked to it slowly, unfastening the silver falcon from my coat one last time. Its edges caught the light as I pressed it into place beneath a single bronze line etched into the wall: proof of survival, promise to speak. A few feet behind me, a camera shutter clicked. I turned slightly. A reporter, young hesitant, stepped forward. "General Quinn," she said softly, "after all this, what matters most to you now?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the plaque, at the empty space that wasn't empty anymore. At Lily, who now stood where her father might have. At Nathan, who stood taller, not because he'd won, but because he'd chosen the right side. I let the silence stretch just long enough for the weight to settle. Then I spoke. That this wall stays standing, and the truth stands with it. Even in the quietest rooms, truth has a sound, and once spoken, it cannot be unheard. Harper didn't chase applause or vengeance. She stood so the fallen could be seen, and so the silence that once buried them would never return. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. Some victories aren't loud, they're measured in what no longer needs to be hidden. If you felt seen by this story, drop a 1 in the comments. If you're still conflicted, leave a 2 and tell us why. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories where truth takes the final bow.